Good morning and welcome to All Faiths service. On Sunday, June 7th, the equipment we were using to bring you our service failed us, so we have decided to offer you this service this morning. I'm the Rev CJ McGregor, and I serve this congregation as its minister and will be leading our service. I have a couple of announcements. If you want to know what's going on this week, please go to your email or our members and friends page and look for the happenings. It will tell you what's going on each day of the week and how you can become involved. If you're missing the ACMA concerts that are typically here on Saturdays, you can also go to our website and our our Facebook page, and you can find out who's performing and join a live stream of that performer. Next Sunday is the Share the Plate. We're sharing 10% of our offering with The Change, which is a theater group at the Alliance for the Arts, offering students of color an opportunity to engage theater. If you want a portion of your donation to go to them, write how much in the memo line of your check, or write a separate check to All Faiths with The Change in the memo line. Remember that no matter who you are, where you are on your spiritual journey, and no matter whom you love, you are always welcome here at All Faiths. Please join in singing our opening hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Commit. Please join and printed in your order of service. Let this flame remind us that none of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility that is waiting. When we are together in this sanctuary, we share our joys and sorrows with our congregation. As we are apart, I invite you to send your joys and sorrows via email, text, phone call to me, and I will be glad to share them with the congregation. Let us share a few moments of silence. Our opening words this morning are from Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds, and let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being common to us all and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion toward ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering for each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the suffering that's going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth.
Come gather around, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accepted that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times they are a-changing. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming, for the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are changed. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can lend a hand, for the times they are changing. times they are
Our reading this morning is titled Roll Away the Stone by Pearl Buck. I enjoy life because I am endlessly interested in people and their growth. My interest leads me to widen my knowledge of people, and this in turn compels me to believe in the common goodness of mankind. I believe that the normal human heart is born good. That is, it's born sensitive and feeling, eager to be approved and to approve, hungry for simple happiness and the chance to live. It neither wishes to be killed nor to kill. If through some circumstance it is overcome by evil, it never becomes entirely evil. There remain in it elements of good, however recessive, which continue to hold the possibility of restoration. I believe in human beings, but my faith is without sentimentality. I know that in environments of uncertainty, fear, and hunger, the human being is dwarfed and shaped without his being aware of it, just as the plant struggling under a stone does not know its own condition. Only when the stone is removed can it spring up freely into the light. But the power to spring up is inherent, and only death puts an end to it. I feel no need for any other faith than my faith in human beings. Like Confucius of old, I am absorbed in the wonder of earth and the life upon it, and I cannot think of heaven and the angels. I have enough for this life. If there is no other life, then this one has to be enough to make it worth being born. Myself, a human being. With so profound a faith in the human heart and in its power to grow toward the light, I find here reason and cause enough for hope and confidence in the future of mankind. The common sense of people will surely prove to them someday that mutual support and cooperation are only sensible for the security and happiness of all. Such faith keeps me continually ready and purposeful with energy to do what one person can do toward shaping the environment in which the human being can grow with freedom. This environment, I believe, is based upon the necessity for security and friendship. I take heart in a promising fact that the world contains food supply sufficient for the entire population. Our knowledge of medical science is already sufficient to improve the health of the whole human race. Our resources in education, if administered on a world scale, can lift the intelligence of the race. All that remains to discover how to administer upon a world scale the benefits which some of us already have. In other words, to return to my simile, the stone must be rolled away. This too can be done as a sufficient number of human beings come to have faith in themselves and faith in each other. Not all will have such faith at the same moment, but there is a growing number who have faith. Half a century ago, no one had thought of world food, world health, world education. Many are thinking today of these things. In the midst of possible world war, of wholesale destruction, I find my only question this: are there enough people now who believe? Is there time enough left for the wise to act? It is a contest between ignorance and death, or wisdom and life. My faith in humanity stands firm. And so ends the reading. Please join in singing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." The lyrics are on the bottom of your order of service.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
The theme of our messages this month is good and evil, and it is good for us to define evil as we unpack today's message, silence in the face of evil. Since World War II, moral, political, and legal philosophers have become increasingly interested in the concept of evil. This interest has been partly motivated by the attributions of evil by laymen, social scientists, journalists, and politicians as they try to understand and to respond to various atrocities and horrors such as genocide, terrorist attacks, mass murders, and tortures and killing sprees. It seems that we cannot capture the moral significance of these actions and their perpetrators by calling them wrong or bad or even very, very wrong or very, very bad. We need the concept of evil. Despite the confusion of the philosophers, the word evil is still in common use. And Susan Neiman, the author of a book titled Evil in Modern Thought, tells us that she is understandably reluctant to offer a single, narrow definition of her own for what evil means today. But what she does suggest is a useful description of what effect evil has. Calling something evil, she writes, is a way of marking the fact that it shatters our trust in the world. And evil is both harmful and inexplicable, but not just that. What defines an evil act is that it is permanently disorienting for all those who are touched by it. Theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." That is, our silence in the face of evil is a decision that we make embracing evil. And I wonder, what is it that would allow us to be silent in the face of evil? Isn't it true that if we stand by with our heads in the sand, we become complicit? Research points to three major reasons for our silence, and the first is pluralistic ignorance. One of the first steps in anyone's decision to help another is the recognition that somebody is actually in the need of help. And to do this, the bystander must realize that they are witnessing an emergency situation and that a victim is in need of assistance. And when we are in an ambiguous situation, we often look to others to see how they are reacting, and we assume that others may know something that we don't. So we gauge their reactions before we decide how we will respond. But if those around us are not acting, then we may fail to recognize the immediacy of the situation and therefore fail to intervene, therefore fail to help. The second is diffusion of responsibility. People may be silent if they do not take personal responsibility for intervening. The problem is that the more bystanders there are, the less responsible each individual feels. When you are the only eyewitness present, 100% of the responsibility for providing help rests on your shoulders. But if there are 5 eyewitnesses, only 20% of the responsibility is yours. The responsibility becomes diffused or dispersed among the group members. In these situations, people may assume that someone else will help out or that someone else is better qualified to provide the assistance that is needed. But if everyone assumes this, then no one will intervene. And the third and last is fatigue. We've all seen all of the issues needing our attention before. It seems we have now become immune to that which ails the world, and it takes more for us now to contribute, to react, and to support. We have evolved under conditions in which our primary concern is to protect ourselves and our own families. Son Pham, a writer for the Ottawa Times, tells us, "There was no adaptive value in protecting hundreds of thousands across an ocean. Today, technology brings us news of famine and genocide in distant lands, but still we are likely to react as we would have in earlier times." Psychologist Paul Slovic asks how we can overcome the psychological obstacles to action. And he says we must create laws and institutions to enforce appropriate action even when we are not psychologically equipped to act. One of those institutions is the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are compelled to act not because of compelling pictures or stories, but because it's morally right. It is the right thing to do. Listening to a lecture from a member of Nuns on the Bus, Sister Simone Campbell, I could tell that her work wasn't just a strategy to instigate action. It was calling from a place of our shared longing. And it was a place of significant risk, as she told us. But what you have to do is you have to let it sink in down from the head into the heart. Walking towards trouble means we're willing to open ourselves to the surprise, she says, to different perspectives. The importance of being uncertain means that I live a life that is slightly disturbed, if you want to know the truth. The Holocaust survivor, author, and Nobel Prize-winning Elie Wiesel tells us the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith isn't heresy, it's indifferent. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. Of course, indifference can be tempting, more than that, seductive, and it's so much easier to look away. It's so much easier to avoid interruptions to our work, our dreams, our hopes. It is, after all, awkward and troublesome to be involved in another person's pain and despair. Yet for the person who is indifferent, his or her neighbors are of no consequence, and therefore their lives are meaningless. Their hidden or even visible anguish is of no interest. Indifference reduces the other to an abstraction. Wiesel writes, indifference elicits no response. Indifference is not a response. Indifference is not a beginning. It is an end, and therefore indifference is always the friend of the enemy because it benefits the aggressor, never his victim, whose pain is magnified when he or she feels forgotten. And the political prisoner in his cell, the hungry children, the homeless refugees, not to respond to their plight, not to relieve their solitude by offering them a spark of hope, is to exile them from human memory. And in denying their humanity, we betray our own humanity. For me, indifference is not unlike saying that you are colorblind. I constantly find myself challenging statements like I'm colorblind, or I don't even notice if people are black, have a disability, are impoverished, or are gay, and on and on. If you are not noticing these things, you are denying someone's part of their identity that should be noticed and celebrated. These are the very things that enrich our experiences and enrich our communities. And I wonder if we are afraid to take notice. We've been taught that spotting differences means we are being exclusive and at risk for being racist or oppressive. It is only when we desire not to learn more about and honor our differences that we are at risk. We are at risk of ignoring injustice and hate, and so because of our blindness, we are at risk of becoming indifferent. A theme that winds through his writing is that of the need to overcome indifference. He says, and I really like this idea, that humans are defined by what troubles us and their response, and that response of a moral society or of a moral person is getting involved with what troubles us. He reminds us that indifference makes no difference, and that to remain silent, knowing that people are suffering, and to have it make no difference is the greatest evil of all. Rather than be indifferent, sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Whenever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must at that moment become the center of the universe. So as we break our silence, as we walk to meet the needs of human pain and human healing, we walk with doubt and with risk of the unknown. And to me, that is where we come to the edge. That place where doubt meets faith, that place of leaving certitude behind, that is the edge, and the edge is a place where we find discomfort, and the edge is a place where we grow. Business as usual is no longer enough. We are at the edge of crisis in how we live together with each other. We can move away from the edge by reaching out in love, and reaching out in love implies moving beyond our places of comfort, including those we have placed around meeting our individual needs, and radically reaching out to those who may be searching for whatever we have found and what we may be able to offer the world, including those who are needing to find help for their human longings. So what does reaching out in love actually mean? First, it is about reaching out past the edge of our traditional comfort as individuals and as congregations. It is totally understandable that we look for hope, for a community that wraps us in a comforting blanket of familiarity and equilibrium. But radically reaching out in love can also challenge the systems and structures that have brought about public racism, that deny and complicate our climate crisis, that continue the political stalemate that impedes us coming together to solve problems, and that feeds the growth of fundamentalists, that threatens long-term peace. Reaching out in love is hard to do, and our work is to think about how to crawl back when we get too close to the edge, how to care for ourselves and each other when the edge feels really scary, and how to deal with the unknown when we reach the edge of what we have known or know. When we are reaching out to the world with our Unitarian Universalist values and principles that we cherish, we should be mustering the strength of others so more voices can be heard. And when we stand with those who are oppressed, we should be doing that arm in arm and shoulder to shoulder with other Unitarian Universalists, with other faith communities or partner organizations who may not share our faith, but certainly share our values. Instead of feeling overwhelmed today with the chaos and lack of love in the world, I am encouraged by the incredible efforts being put forth by so many. There is so much good. There is so much love. There actually is some progress, and we have come so far with so much more to go in what may be a shorter time than we think. So find sources of strength and sustenance. Be willing to appreciate your comfort spots, and yet being willing to let go of things as they have always been done. Love can still prevail as we continue to walk towards trouble. Reach out in love and stand together on the edge. Sister Simone Campbell concluded her lecture by reading Incarnation, a poem she wrote in Baghdad, a portion of which was, "Let compassion be our hands reaching to be with each other, all others to touch, hold, heal this fractured world. Let wisdom be our feet bringing us to the crying, need to friends or foe to share this body's blood. Let love be our eyes that we may see the beauty, see the dream lurking in the shadows of despair and dread." May it be so. We are grateful for your offering to the congregation, and I offer this really bad joke to encourage your generosity. A string walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve strings here," and the string walks out sad and defeated, and he ties himself in a bow, cuts off the ends to look pretty, and struts back into the bar. And the bartender looks at him and says, "Hey, aren't you the string I turned away before?" And the string says, "Nope, I'm afraid not."
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I still believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I still believe we shall overcome someday.
Go in peace, live simply, live gently, at home in yourselves. Speak justly, act justly. Remember the depth of your own compassion, and forget not your power in these days of your powerlessness. Speak the truth or speak not. Take care of yourselves as bodies, for you are a good gift. Crave peace for all people in crisis. beginning with yourselves and go as you go with the dream of that peace is alive in your heart. Blessed be.
I'll sing it one last time for you, then we really have to go. You've been the only thing that's right in all I've done, and I can barely look at you, but every single time I do, I know we'll make it anywhere away from here. Light up, as if you have a choice. Even if you cannot hear my voice, I'll be right beside you there. Louder, we'll run for our lives. I can hardly speak. I understand why you can't raise your voice to say. Do you think I might not see those eyes? It makes it so hard not to cry. But as we say our long goodbyes, I nearly do. Light up, as if you have a choice. Even if you cannot hear my voice, I'll be right beside you, dear. Louder, and we'll run for our lives. I can hardly speak. I understand why you can't raise your voice to say. Slower, we don't have time for that. All I want's to find an easier way to get out of our little heads. Have heart, my dear, we're bound to be afraid, even if it's just for a few days, making up for all this mess. Light up, as if you have a choice. Even if you cannot hear my voice, I'll be right beside you, dear.
Before I extinguish our chalice, I would like to thank Ed Elrod on sound, Regina Kilmartin, who is our director and camera person, and of course Joseph, who brings us music. Thank you for their time this morning. Please join in the words printed in your order of service as I extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world.